Morning, everyone. Lots going on, and we're going to get into the we scandal keeps building, and there's new things that keep happening every day, which the strategy of the Liberal government is to fall on your sword and get this out of the news cycle as fast as possible. If there's nothing new to report, then there's no news stories, and it just disappears, right? And they won't be held to account until September, and a month and a half is a long time. A lot can happen in a month and a half, right? So, but this scandal keeps gaining steam. But first, I just wanted to mention this. Post Millennial is reporting, among nationwide calls to defund police departments, the city of Saskatoon decided to reverse that trend and increase funding. How great of a decision is this? And I think that if you live in a municipality and you pay taxes, this is one of the core functions of those tax dollars. You want a well-run police department. I certainly don't want to be funding bridges to nowhere or tanks or anything to that effect. And tanks, like, militarization of the police. But Canada really didn't go in that direction the way the United States did. And so having the BLM trend of defund police being pushed on municipalities by people who are students or people who don't pay property taxes, I think that that's folly for leaders to fall for that. And I think that it's not great for newspapers to be reporting in a way that is legitimizing those concerns, because if you're paying property taxes, and property taxes pay for things like transit, things like all the services, right? Like all of the extra good things about a city get paid for by the people who live there, right? If you want lots of parks, if you want all of that stuff, there's city revenue, and then there's property taxes. And if you pay property taxes, one of the core things that you require, aside from roads being paved and sewage, is security, right? You don't want to live in Mad Max hellscape, right? Like you don't want to live in the city from Escape from New York, right? Like that is not where you want to live, and you don't pay taxes for that. And so I think that fundamentally the legitimization of these students' media influenced concerns is irresponsible of our media, and it doesn't look at what the wider public wants. The wider public doesn't want to replace police officers with social servants or social workers. That they're different jobs. And I grew up with social workers. I grew up knowing the Family and Children's Services community, for lack of a better word, really well. And like the social workers and the managers, and I worked in that field when I was very young, like 20, 21. And because I went to college when I was young, blah, 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 it doesn't matter. But fundamentally, when you are in an emergency situation, you don't want a social worker. You want somebody who can back up the no. And you want somebody who everybody understands is enforcing a set of laws that are agreed upon by the state, right? Like, you don't want social workers coming in and saying, oh, well, in this situation, it's dangerous. It's dangerous, man. I've worked crisis. I know. And there are sometimes people who just want to see the world burn. They just want to hurt you, and they will continue to hurt you until you stop them or you disentangle yourself. And if you can't, if the police aren't there, or if there's a social worker who thinks they can fix things, 5 a.m, or 4 a.m, 2 a.m, when there's a crisis, is not the time for a social worker to come and solve the problem. It's not. Anyway, I digress. Getting into sorry, that was a long intro today. Here is Pierre Poilievre. This is a quick one. He's talking about the Prime Minister as a politician of convictions. A little bit of wordplay, but it's an interesting answer. Here we go.
I'm wondering whether you think Canadians should be concerned about a pattern here, given that there have been ethical questions in the past facing this Prime Minister, as you know very well.
Yeah, I like to say Justin Trudeau is a politician of conviction. He has two of them. His first was when he was found guilty of having accepted hundreds of thousands of dollars of free vacations from someone who was seeking a $15 million government grant from him, the Aga Khan. The second was when he interfered to try and block the criminal prosecution of a Liberal-linked company, SNC-Lavalin. And now we have a third situation where he personally interfered to give an unnecessary and highly unusual billion-dollar contract to an organization that had given his family over $300,000.
Pierre, always good to talk to you.
And he wraps it up nicely there, doesn't he? Kind of nice little package, right? I said the SNC-Lavalin scandal was hard to explain, right? A DPA, what's that? Why did he replace her? Blah, blah, blah. It's hard to explain. This one's really easy to explain. Really easy to explain. He gave a charity $900 million who then directly paid his mom. Yeah, that's a scandal. That's a big scandal. Imagine Harper did that, right? Here you go, Mom. People would be losing their mind. The press would be all over it. Here's Yves Francois Blanchette, and he's the leader of the Bloc Québécois. And he says, "We believe that one cannot order a police investigation like one orders a pizza. The last thing we want is for political parties to order investigations against their opponents." And he's talking about the Conservatives wanting police to take a look at this. And realistically, I think that's reflective of their base. I was talking to my dad yesterday, who was telling me his friends were talking about, why aren't the police investigating this? This seems pretty obvious, that there should be some kind of investigation or something. And is it up to Miss Lucky to announce an investigation from the RCMP into the WE scandal? I don't know if there's a legal basis for this. I don't know exactly what criminal, what laws have been broken exactly. Isn't it embezzlement, right? If you're using other people to pay, like if you're just kind of funneling money from one group that you're in control of to a group who benefits you personally, like a family member, right? Like that's embezzlement, is it not? Anyway, so I don't know exactly. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know exactly what the laws being broken are. But the Conservatives seem to think that laws have been broken, and I don't think it's necessarily outside of the realm of politics to point out laws have been broken. But I think that they should be more clear about that, specifically what laws have been broken. That would be a better headline. That would be something to talk about. Then there's some substance to push back and forth on, right? Like then the pundits could weigh in and say, oh yeah, there's precedent here and there's not there. But just saying, the police should be called. It's kind of weak, right? Like I agree with Blanchette here on that we don't want people ordering police investigations on their political opponents. But I think that if you have a case that laws have been broken, I think that you have a responsibility to point that out, right? So despite the Bloc saying we don't think that we should be ordering police investigations like pizza, they agree with the Conservatives and the NDP, and Robert Fife is reporting Bloc NDP joined Conservatives call for Justin Trudeau to testify on We charity contract, the Globe and Mail. So they all want Justin Trudeau to testify at their ministerial session, and they want answers. And I think Justin's play is to give answers to the press, because the press they're not sworn in, right? So they can move it back to their talking point as fast as possible. Here's an example. Vasi Kopoulis tells Barty Scheger that she's not answering the question, and the question is X. Can you answer X directly? And the question is conflict of interest. Did you ask about them? And she says nope. But really, the biggest problem is the children are missing out. Here we go.
Respectfully, you're not answering me specifically, though. Did you ask? I understand you asked questions about students. You wanted the program to be successful. Did you ask about the Prime Minister's conflict of interest?
Directly, I did not ask anyone other conflict of interest, and that's why today when the Prime Minister came forward, he apologized, and he also shared that he really regrets the fact that students are not able to take advantage of service opportunities right now, that not-for-profits are not able to.
I just want to point out that she said, I did not ask anybody, and that's why the Prime Minister apologized this morning during his thing. His responsibility is not to apologize for Barty Scheger not doing her job, right? Her job as the minister, she's the Minister of Youth, as for delivering this program, is to make sure that everything's above board, right? So she sat around cabinet and allowed all of these people who had family members being paid tell her, yeah, okay, let's go with the we choice that is recommended by the public service. But we find out from the Public Service Union that it seems like there's dissension in those ranks. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see the recommendation from the public service. But it's very interesting that Scheger uses Trudeau's apology as a de facto apology for her deficiency, and launches right back into pulling the conversation away from the Liberal mistake of not recusing half the cabinet because they've got a conflict of interest with we. From McKenna, who's spoken there, to Morneau, to, right, all of them. Telford's not cabinet, but PMO. So you can't not apologize for your role. You can't say, oh yeah, the prime minister did that the other day. He was apologizing for me. I don't think that works, right? I don't think that works. So and man, like Mendocino's been giving her some tips. She's right back on that talking point, right? And the talking point is, we're sad that this program can't roll out the way it was supposed to. People are being impacted. The program's like could still be delivered by the public service, right? Like the bones of it are in place, are they not? Here is moving on. The Prime Minister's office said Ms. Telford did not recuse herself from discussions about the contract, and Mr. O'Regan's office said he did not recuse himself from the cabinet decision. So these are all people who were involved with. I did a report the other day on, I can't remember her last name, a socialite who has the travel charity, or the art charity, and they all opened this art charity together in like 2010. So before they were in cabinet and before they were in high level positions of power in the government, but certainly on track to be there. So certainly a conflict of interest exists, especially the art charity person, and I apologize that I can't find her name, but I'm not going to run and find it now. And Telford are still best friends. She's probably one of the assets. I mean, go have a look through her Twitter. I did a report on her a few days ago. It starts with an A. If you go and look at her Twitter, you can see that she's clearly a liberal acolyte. She likes the liberal platform, and she's propagating it in public. So, I mean, all of these connections bear looking at, especially when they were just given a sole source $1 billion contract by a government that is, well, under investigation for ethic breaches. Here's another one. This is the story that keeps giving, right? This is July 15th. Today is the 15th, updated 3 hours ago. And I bet you there's going to be another bombshell before tomorrow. So here it is, National Post. Trudeau government contributed $1.18 million to We Day event in 2017, during which PM's mother was likely paid to speak. It's speculation, National Post, but still. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau asked We Charity to host a 2017 Canada Day event on Parliament Hill, the organizer's co-founder said, for which the government paid $1.18 million. And Trudeau's mother, who had been receiving fees for making public appearances at We events at the time, was a speaker at the event. In a memo obtained by National Post, Mark Kielburger said he had received the invitation from Trudeau and the Heritage Ministry. Quote, I'm thrilled to share that we have been invited by the Prime Minister and Canadian Heritage to host a unique We Day event in Ottawa on Canada Day weekend 2017, Kielburger wrote in the memo to staff. The Prime Minister's office neither confirmed nor denied Trudeau's involvement in the invitation, and we did not respond to multiple National Post inquiries asking whether Margaret Trudeau had been paid for her appearance. However, We Charity said last week that Margaret Trudeau had been paid a total of $312,000 in speaking fees for attending 28 We events between 2016 and 2020. During those speeches, she spoke primarily on the topics of mental health, We Charity explained. Mental health was also the topic she spoke about at the 2017 Canada Day event. The Prime Minister also spoke at that event. Federal public records show that Heritage Canada Department contributed $1.18 million to We to host the event. The same year, We produced a campaign-style ad that appears to promote Justin Trudeau and his Liberal government while also doubling as a promo for the charity. I scroll down. It would be entirely unacceptable for Canadian tax dollars to be used to pay a speaking fee for the mother of the Prime Minister at an event where she was appearing with him. It is an unbelievable revelation in a series of unbelievable revelations. I scroll down. Later, a spokesperson for the Heritage Minister confirmed that it was Melanie Joly who held the role in 2017, who had signed off on the contribution agreement. Cabinet was not involved in the process. Spokesperson Camille Gagné-Reynaud. Sorry, I forgot that wrong. Said, if any cabinet minister or anyone acting on behalf of any cabinet minister or the Prime Minister or anyone acting on behalf of the Prime Minister communicated with anybody in the public service about this, then it's a violation of the conflict of interest rules for Trudeau, said Democracy Watch co-founder Duff Conachar. The Prime Minister's office did not respond to multiple questions on this topic. Notably, what was Trudeau's role in extending an invitation to We Charity to host We Day on 2017 on Parliament Hill? Did the government require any assurance from the We organization that no part of the $1.18 million taxpayer-funded contribution would go towards paying Margaret Trudeau's potential speaking fees? And then that's the end of that. I wanted to highlight this because I think it's really interesting. In this article, they talk about how it was a $300,000 payout for Margaret Trudeau $312,000. Okay, in this article. In this one, and this one's published yesterday at 7 p.m. So I don't see any reason why they'd have any different information. It talks about how Margaret Trudeau's speaking fees have been $250,000. So here's the CBC article, quote, late last week it emerged that Trudeau's mother, Margaret, was paid approximately $250,000 for speaking at 28 events, while his brother Alexander spoke at 8 events and received about $32,000. Why the difference in reporting here? I don't understand. Like, why is one saying $312,000 speaking fees and one $250,000? Is the $250,000 less the 20%? Could be. Maybe that's the $312,000 is the total monetary value, and the $312,000 is potentially what she, the $250,000, excuse me, is potentially what she made after paying her agent. That's just speculation. I'm just trying to figure out where that difference is. I haven't done the math on it, so maybe I'm wrong. But weird, right? That's strange. Okay. Moving on, Canadians push back as U.S. Congress pressures Canada to reopen shared border. Yesterday I said I didn't know what the play was. I'm not playing at a high enough level to understand why the border is shut until August 21st. And I hadn't really seen any pushback. Everybody's kind of just going along with it, right? Like, not from the provinces, not from people. Nobody's upset about this. So it seems really odd that there's no dissent. Everybody's like, yep, keep that border closed. And everybody's cool with it. Well, I found out that wasn't exactly true. So here's an article I missed from the 10th. And it says, a U.S. member of Congress has pushed Canada As U.S. members of Congress push Canada to reopen its shared border with the United States, Canadians are pushing back, both in government and on social media. In an open letter addressed to Public Safety Minister Bill Blair, 29 bipartisan members of Congress called on the Canadian government to plan a phased reopening of the Canadian-U.S. border and to consider easing existing measures. So the U.S. is calling on Canada to open the borders. Canada is not really listening. And I think that it's interesting that there are people who are pushing, but there's not the interest on our side. So yeah, I mean, like, and Ms. Freeland is saying, like, decisions about Canada's borders are made by Canadians for Canadians, said Freeland spokesperson Catherine Kupslinkas. Sorry if I got that wrong in the statement. So man, I still don't know what the play is here. Here's 60 MPs urge sanctions against Chinese officials. So the 60 MPs are interested in sanctioning Chinese officials. They're not interested in opening the border. But 29 congressmen are interested in opening the border. So sorry if I got that crossed at the beginning of that story. I think I did. But I'm not going to stop now because it's like almost 20 minutes in. Anyway, 60 MPs urge sanctions against Chinese officials. So, quoting Canada's foreign minister as part of their justification, 63 MPs, 4 senators, a former House of Commons speaker, and more than 20 community groups have signed a letter urging the government impose Magnitsky sanctions against Chinese officials. Organized by the Alliance Canadian Hong Kong ACHK, the letter made public on Tuesday morning asks Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, his deputy Chrystia Freeland, and Global Affairs Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne to sanction Chinese and Hong Kong officials directly responsible for human rights atrocities happening in Tibet, occupied East Turkestan, and Hong Kong. The letter quotes Champagne, who said in a tweet earlier this month, "Sanctions are an important tool to hold perpetrators of gross human rights violations to account." Nearly half the Conservative Party caucus signed the letter, including Leona Alisev, who stepped down as deputy leader of the party on Monday to endorse Peter MacKay in its upcoming leadership election. I wanted to include this story because it included that. I didn't realize that Alisev had stepped down as the deputy leader. I actually think I razzed her about this on Twitter, like on Monday. So weird coincidence. But yeah, she stepped down as deputy leader and endorsed Peter MacKay. I think it's going to be Peter MacKay, despite everything, despite that he's terrible. He's not a good communicator. I think Andrew Scheer would be better. I think Andrew Scheer would have a better shot at beating Justin Trudeau right now than Peter MacKay. So take that with a grain of salt, but she stepped down, so weird. Anyway, back to this. Current leader Andrew Scheer did not sign it. MacKay and fellow frontrunner Aaron O'Toole, a current MP, both endorsed the use of Magnitsky sanctions against Chinese officials. MacKay is not a signatory, but O'Toole has added his signature to the letter on Tuesday, a spokesperson said. And the world is watched in horror as details trickle out of Xinjiang province where some 2 million Uyghur Muslims are being held by Chinese authorities in detention camps for re-education or the alleged erasure of their religion, language, and culture. Meanwhile, China has recently imposed a new national security law on Hong Kong that erodes the city's long-held autonomy. The United States has imposed economic sanctions on Hong Kong over the treatment of the Uyghurs, slapped its own set of Magnitsky sanctions on Chinese government actors, and Magnitsky laws named after the late Russian whistleblower have been passed in many democratic countries, most recently in the United Kingdom this month, to enable governments to levy economic penalties on specific foreign officials accused of abusing human rights. I scroll down. Trudeau's government has been cagey in its response to any and all concerns about China. The arbitrary imprisonment of Canadian Michael Kovig and Michael Spavor, a quid pro quo after Canada arrested Huawei's CEO Meng Wanzhou in December 2018 for possible extradition to the United States, has loomed large in Canada-China relations. Yeah, so all of these international things are very interesting because we still haven't stopped international flights, right? Just the land borders closed with the U.S. All of it, very, very interesting. Very interesting. Here's another little interesting piece coming back to federal government and transparency. Blacklock's reporter is reporting Fed censorship reaches new low as Transport Canada conceals as secret the number of cars that take the ferry in Surrey, PEI. And, right? Why? Why'd they do that? They removed some climate data as well. Very, very, very strange. First shipment of Alberta oil arrives in St. John after journey through the Panama Canal. It's a month-long, 12,000-kilometer journey on a barge through the Panama Canal. The shipment arrived on Canada's east coast on the 14th, so yesterday. Yeah, we could just build a pipeline, right? I feel like that meme where somebody like says it at the end of the office desk and they throw them out the window. Here's a concerning story. Here's a really strange, concerning story for you. And I know that I'm getting to the end of the show, but man, this is a weird one. Top Toronto health officials wins rare intervener status in court battle over vaccinating couples' children. This is very, very problematic, I think. The fact that the court is trying, that the Toronto health officials are trying and using and winning this case to push their political ideology. Toronto's chief public health official has won the right to intervene in a court dispute over vaccinating a divorced couple's children, a rare step Dr. Eileen de Villa says was necessary to combat dangerous misinformation about vaccines. Yes, they're going to intervene in vaccinating a couple's children because of the dangers of misinformation about vaccines. That is appalling, okay? The city's medical officer of health, MOH, now has lawyers taking part in an appeal slated for September after an earlier arbitration decision ruled it was better for the two children not to be immunized. So an arbitrator decided, yeah, she's got a point, we're not going to have them immunized. And so now it's at the courts. Okay. The health department's request to intervene came in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, where wide adoption of vaccines, when they become available, is considered crucial to ending the crisis. Really? Really? I don't consider it crucial to ending the crisis. I don't think that's ever been true in human history, especially for a coronavirus, right? Like, do we need a vaccine for a coronavirus? Show me one vaccine for a coronavirus that works. I remember what happened during the SARS one. And here's what happened during the H1N1 flu vaccine in the UK in 2009. Here it is. This is from 2013, this news article, okay? Swine flu vaccine can trigger narcolepsy. UK government concedes. Review of fresh evidence finds jabs given to 6 million people in Britain can occasionally cause a sleep disorder. The government is to reverse its stance on the safety of a swine flu vaccine given to 6 million people in Britain and accepts that on rare occasions the jab can trigger the devastating sleep disorder narcolepsy. The Department for Work and Pensions, DWP, has contacted people turned down for compensation last year to explain that after a review of fresh evidence, it now accepts that the vaccine can cause the condition. Really concerning. Okay, back to this. So it's still unbelievable. The dangers of misinformation about vaccines is triggering Toronto Health to intervene in this. Back to this. The health department's to consider ending the crisis, right? Her interest in this appeal is informed in part by a rising threat to public health, the department argued in written submissions. A serious challenge for public health officials today is the proliferation of misinformation surrounding the utility, efficacy, and safety of vaccinations. A reduction in vaccinations due to vaccine hesitancy can reduce herd immunity and can lead to outbreaks and also put vulnerable individuals at risk. So we have to immunize these 2 children. Okay. But the mother, who objects to having the pair immunized, has opposed the health department's intervention in the case. Her lawyers argue it would duplicate testimony from another public health official called on by the father, and that the case hinges on the specific interests of one family, not the broader questions of vaccines, benefits, and risks. Justice Jasmine Akbalari, sorry if I got that wrong, disagreed in a judgment issued quietly this spring, saying this case was now in the public sphere of the courts, not a private arbitration, and the results could have a broader societal impact. The MOH can make a unique contribution and offer a distinct perspective on the issue raised in this appeal, which may assist the court in understanding the impact of its judgment beyond the private interests of the parties and their children, said the judge. I scroll down. Ruling as an arbitrator on one such disagreement last year, lawyer Herschel Fogelman sided with the mother and said the children should not receive standard childhood vaccinations. He cited at length the testimony from Dr. Tony Bark, an American doctor who had shifted her practice largely to alternative medicine and is a staunch vaccine critic. You see what they're setting up here? Okay. They're giving history to discredit this person. Back to this. Choosing not to vaccinate is not illegal, negligent, or immoral. It is a personal choice, Fogelman wrote. I am unable to find any risk to the children if they remain unvaccinated. Further, I'm satisfied of the evidence that vaccines may pose additional risk to them. But several infectious disease and public health experts, some of whom volunteered to provide evidence. So not only do they say some people disagree, they link to the evidence, to help the father's case, have since responded that the scientific record contradicts most of Bark's contentions. In fact, Davila argued in part that her intervention was needed because judges and other adjudicators must act as gatekeepers and protect the justice system from such unreliable expert advice. Failing to do so can result in a flawed judicial decision-making, reduce the confidence of the public in our system of justice, and bring the administration of justice into disrepute. If we don't vaccinate these children, our entire system of justice could collapse. Hyperbolic? Back to this. The mother's lawyer responded that the arbitrator acknowledged that there was broad government support for vaccination and said that he was not ruling on the general question of whether the drugs work and are safe. The only question was whether it is in the best interest of our 2 children to be vaccinated. The mother's representatives told the court the appeal of a private family law arbitration is not an appropriate forum for the city to pursue its policy objectives in relation to systemic vaccination. The mother also argued that intervention by Davila would make the children the focus of a highly publicized policy dispute, harming them further after media coverage of the case had already caused stress and anxiety. The mother herself has been the target of online bullying, the lawyer said, but the judge said she had already addressed the impact on the children by ordering earlier that the media could not identify them or their parents in any way. Man, when the government says it's safe and then a few years after says, oh, you know what, you were totally right, money doesn't cut it. I don't want money, I want my health. Thank you very much. So very, very dangerous days in Canada these days. Here's a weird one as well. People with Ontario plates getting rude welcome from presumptuous Maritimers. That's not Canada. I don't believe that. Here's BC forecasting a staggering $12.5 billion deficit due to COVID-19. This could be the worst downturn experienced in our province in recent history, says the finance minister. Has she looked at the federal books? Ontario looks at $12.5 million and says, oh my goodness, trade. We'll trade you. Our debt is $343 billion and increasing, going up. I don't even know what it is after COVID-19. I don't know what the numbers look like. Here's a little bit of business news. Canada's economy shrank by 20% in March and April, but turnaround seen in May data. Canada's economy shrank by 11.6% in April, the biggest plunge on record following March's contraction of 7.5% as COVID-19 lockdowns began. Statistics Canada reported Tuesday that all 20 categories the data agency tracks were lower, and they added up to the biggest monthly plunge since record-keeping began in 1961? That seems like, didn't they keep records in like the Great Depression? They didn't count the economy then? Really? Like, seriously? That seems really what's the word? Yeah, it seems weird. It does seem weird. This is the last one this is the first QAnon news article I've seen in Canada, and I think that it's very strange how hard they're working to discredit this. Is QAnon that big in Canada? I didn't think that it was, because usually, you go out and you don't know what people think, right? So like, who knows? But I didn't think that this was as needing a response from the media. But the media says QAnon flags have been spotted flying in a YYC neighborhood. As Taylor Bratt reports, they promote far-right conspiracy theories. I've never seen a far-right conspiracy theory. It's interesting how linking to laws and pointing out connections between people, that's a far-right conspiracy theory. I think that the QAnon phenomenon is similar to people who were reading like the Deep Throat drops in the 70s, I think it was. During the Nixon era, 1975, right? And I think that those are relatively equal. I think that people look at them like they're interesting bits of pop culture that are happening, and they're not happening, right? And if you say that's a conspiracy theory to everything, I mean, there was a point in time where the WHO was saying that person-to-person transmission of COVID-19 was a conspiracy theory, right? That doesn't happen. You're crazy. Don't say that on social media. You're driving confusion and misinformation, right? Until it's not anymore. So, I mean, just pointing the fact that just saying far-right conspiracy theories, it just isn't enough, right? It just isn't enough when the connections are very interesting. You saw Harvey Weinstein go down, right? Like, that doesn't happen, right? He was getting awards at some of the most prestigious award shows, and then all of a sudden a Me Too moment, and crash goes Harvey Weinstein, and there's lots of very interesting connections all through there that worth looking at. Anyway, right? It's a fun bit of pop culture because Hollywood's not delivering on anything entertaining, right? I mean, tell me the last movie you went to see. Couldn't remember. That wasn't like Marvel. And even then, like, they're just injecting their own propaganda garbage into it. People aren't interested. You know what's the most interesting show in the world right now? The most engaging, interesting spy novel happening in the world right now? It's unfolding right before us. And if you're not watching, I mean, that's up to you, but I'm watching. Does that make me a far-right conspiracy theorist? Okay, sure. I'm also a depraved racist. Like, sure I am. Okay. If you want to call me that, then that's just fine. I'm going to continue living my life and ignore your crazy, crazy ranting. That's pretty much where I'm at. So deal with it. It's interesting. I think you should watch it. And if you don't want to watch it, that's just fine. I don't care. Thanks for watching me. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. And have a wonderful, wonderful